The video you are about to see wasn't captured by a professional film crew or staged for the cameras. It is a grainy, 2-minute clip recorded on a volunteer's cell phone at a local animal shelter on a typical Saturday afternoon. But for the family of Leo, a 7-year-old boy with nonverbal autism, this footage represents a miracle they had spent nearly 3,000 days praying for. For 7 long years, Leo had lived in a fortress of silence, never uttering a single complete sentence, leaving his parents to wonder if they would ever truly hear their son's heart through his voice. Everything changed when he stopped in front of the most isolated kennel in the building, the one housing a dog covered in severe burn scars, an animal deemed aggressive and unreachable by everyone else. What the camera caught in that moment left the entire shelter staff breathless. It was a destined encounter that shattered years of isolation, proving that some souls can only be healed when they find a pain that mirrors their own. Leo's world was a place of vivid colors and complex patterns, but it was a world where words simply didn't exist. Since his diagnosis at age 3, his parents, Sarah and Mark, had spent every waking hour trying to find the key to his lock. They tried speech therapy, specialized schools, and sensory play, but Leo remained behind an invisible wall. He didn't cry often. He just stared through people as if they were made of glass. For Sarah, the hardest part wasn't the silence itself. It was the feeling that her son was right there, but she could never truly reach him. The silence in their home wasn't peaceful. It was heavy, like a fog that never lifted, leaving a hollow ache in the hearts of 2 parents who just wanted to hear their son say mom or dad. On the other side of town, in the darkest corner of the county animal shelter, lived a soul who understood that heavy silence all too well. His name was Phoenix, a scruffy mix who carried the physical evidence of a nightmare on his spine. Phoenix had been rescued from a horrific house fire, a victim of both tragedy and unspeakable neglect. His fur was missing in large, jagged patches, replaced by thick, pink scar tissue that ran from his neck to his tail. Because of his trauma, Phoenix didn't act like a good boy. He didn't wag his tail or bark for treats. Instead, he would retreat to the back of his kennel, baring his teeth and growling at anyone who dared to come near. The shelter staff had labeled him Code Red, aggressive, unstable, and unreachable. He was the dog that everyone was told to avoid. Society had labeled them both. Leo was the nonverbal child, and Phoenix was the dangerous dog. 2 lives, discarded by the mainstream, drifting in parallel oceans of isolation. They were both trapped in cages, one made of steel bars, and the other made of neurological barriers. They were 2 broken puzzles with missing pieces, waiting for a hand that didn't just want to fix them, but to understand them. Neither knew that their paths were about to collide on a rainy Tuesday, in a meeting that would change the course of their lives forever. It was a Tuesday afternoon, gray and heavy with rain, when Sarah and Mark decided to take Leo to the shelter. Not to adopt, but simply to walk in a different environment. As they filled out paperwork, Leo, in his usual quiet way, drifted toward the back of the facility. He wasn't running. He was following a pull that no one else could feel. He stopped in front of Kennel 42. Inside, Phoenix was pacing, a low, guttural growl vibrating in his chest. A volunteer gasped, rushing forward to pull Leo away. "Careful, honey, that one isn't friendly," she whispered, her voice tight with fear. But Leo didn't move. He didn't flinch at the growl. Instead, he did something no human had ever dared to do. He slowly reached his small, trembling hand through the steel bars. Sarah, seeing this from across the hall, felt her heart stop. She opened her mouth to scream, but no sound came out. Leo's fingers didn't go for Phoenix's head or ears. They landed softly with the precision of a surgeon, right on the jagged, hairless scar tissue on the dog's back. Phoenix froze. The growling stopped instantly. The air in the hallway seemed to vanish. Then the miracle happened. Leo leaned his forehead against the cold bars, closed his eyes, and whispered 6 words that shattered 7 years of silence. "It hurts just like me." 2. Phoenix, the dog they said was a monster, didn't bite. He didn't bark. Instead, He let out a long, shaky breath and slowly lowered his body. He crawled toward the bars and rested his heavy head directly on Leo's lap, closing his eyes in a gesture of absolute surrender. For the first time in both of their lives, the world was no longer a scary place. The volunteer who recorded that moment posted it online that evening. She titled it "The Language of Scars." Within 48 hours, the video had been viewed over 10 million times. People from all over the country were moved to tears, not just by the dog's transformation, but by the breakthrough of a child they thought was lost. But the real magic happened in the weeks that followed. Leo didn't just stop at those 6 words. He began to ask for Phoenix every morning. He started using more words to describe his feelings, using Phoenix as his bridge to the world. For Sarah and Mark, it was like meeting their son for the very first time. The boy who couldn't look people in the eye was now leaning into the world, led by a 4-legged friend who understood his silence. Phoenix's physical wounds healed, but his soul healed faster. He was no longer code red. He became the shelter's miracle dog, eventually being officially adopted by Leo's family. The house that was once filled with a heavy, oppressive silence was now filled with the sound of a boy's laughter and the steady, rhythmic thumping of a happy tail against the floor. One life was saved from the shadows of a fire. Another was rescued from the shadows of isolation. Together, they weren't broken anymore. They were a masterpiece of resilience. We live in a world obsessed with noise. We navigate our lives through a constant stream of conversation, operating under the grand illusion that to truly understand the heartbeat of another living being, we must first find the right words. We search for logic, for structured sentences, and for complex explanations to bridge the immense distance between our own souls and those around us. We think that if we cannot name a feeling, we cannot share it. But Leo and Phoenix have shattered that illusion forever. They have shown us that the most profound, life-altering connections are never built on a foundation of sentences. Instead, they are forged in the quiet spaces, in the silent, visceral recognition of a shared struggle that exists far beneath the surface of speech. In that forgotten corner of the animal shelter, where the air was thick with the scent of unfulfilled hope, 2 beings deemed unreachable by society finally collided. A boy who had spent 7 years locked within the fortress of nonverbal autism, and a dog who had learned that human hands only brought pain found a frequency that only they could hear. They didn't need a dictionary. They communicated through the very thing that the world had used to try and break them: their suffering. They taught us a lesson that our modern, polished society often forgets. A scar is never a mark of shame. It is not a sign of weakness or a memory of defeat. Instead, a scar is a badge of survival. It is a living, breathing testimony, a silent shout to the universe that despite the fire, despite the trauma, and despite the shadows, we are still here. We have endured. We often think that healing is something that happens in a doctor's office or is found within the sterile pages of a medical textbook. But true restoration comes from a place much more raw. It comes from the simple, terrifying courage to be vulnerable, to stand naked in our own brokenness alongside another soul who is just as shattered as we are. Because at the end of the day, perhaps we aren't all searching for a hero to fix us or a miracle to put our pieces back exactly as they were. Maybe what we truly crave is simply a companion, someone who isn't afraid to step away from the light and stand with us, side by side, in the dark. Thank you for watching, and more importantly, thank you for having the heart to see the breathtaking beauty that exists within the broken. Until next time, remember this: the most powerful language in this world, the one that changes lives and heals the unhealable, is the one that never requires a single word. Red Heart.